In a world that never stops buzzing, true silence has become a rare luxury. Our days are filled with constant noise, notifications, conversations, opinions, and endless streams of information that invade even the quiet corners of our minds. We are almost never alone anymore. But what if being alone isn't something to fear? What if solitude, genuine, intentional solitude, could be the key to transforming your life? Miyamoto Musashi, the legendary samurai, believed exactly that. He understood something most people overlook, that strength of body and clarity of mind are born not in the crowd, but in the quiet moments when you face yourself. Musashi spent much of his life in solitude, sharpening his sword, his spirit, and his understanding of the human condition. And in his final years, he left behind a masterpiece, Dakodo, The Path of Walking Alone. Within this short yet profound text are 21 principles, precepts that reveal how to live with focus, honor, and inner peace in a chaotic world. These teachings are not merely rules. They are a philosophy, a way of being that teaches how solitude can become the most powerful forge for personal growth. Join us as we explore Musashi's timeless lessons and uncover how walking the path of solitude can completely reshape your life. Before we dive into his teachings, we must first understand the man behind them. Miyamoto Musashi was not just a warrior, he was a force of nature. Born in 1584, during Japan's turbulent age of civil wars, he lived as a ronin, a masterless samurai, wandering from place to place, guided only by his own code. He fought and won over 60 duels, many of them to the death. Yet his story is not merely one of violence and bloodshed. It is the story of a man who turned combat into meditation, who discovered enlightenment through discipline and solitude. Musashi's genius extended beyond the battlefield. He was an artist, a calligrapher, a strategist, and a philosopher whose wisdom has endured for centuries. But what made him truly extraordinary was not just his unmatched skill with the sword. It was his relentless pursuit of mastery over himself. He sought victory not over others, but over the restless, fearful, and distracted mind within. And the tool that allowed him to achieve this mastery was solitude. Musashi's solitude wasn't about retreating from the world or living like a monk in a cave. It was about cultivating mental solitude, a quiet strength within the storm. It meant silencing the noise of society, muting the endless chatter that keeps us from hearing our own thoughts. Through this silence, he found clarity, a deeper understanding of who he was and what truly mattered. He believed that solitude was not isolation, but revelation. In solitude, you strip away the masks you wear for others. You face your fears, your flaws, and your truth, raw and unfiltered. It is in this stillness that real growth begins. As Musashi wrote in one of his most powerful lines, "Think lightly of yourself and deeply of the world." Those 8 words carry an entire philosophy. They remind us to look beyond our ego, to see life not as a reflection of ourselves, but as a vast, ever-unfolding reality waiting to be understood. To think lightly of yourself means to release pride, comparison, and insecurity, the things that cloud our judgment. To think deeply of the world is to stay curious, humble, and open to learning from every experience. This balance, humility paired with awareness, forms the heart of Musashi's wisdom. Because when the ego fades, the mind clears, and in that clarity, one finds direction, peace, and strength that no outside force can shake. Musashi's path was one of discipline and introspection. He trained not only his sword, but his spirit, refining both through countless hours of solitary practice. Every stroke of his blade mirrored a stroke of his inner transformation. He believed that only through solitude could a person fully confront their weaknesses, sharpen their strengths, and develop true mastery. Free from distractions, he could see his path clearly, not clouded by opinions, praise, or judgment. This is why solitude, for Musashi, was never loneliness, it was liberation. It was a sacred space where the external world quieted enough for the internal one to speak. He turned solitude into his greatest ally, his silent teacher, his mirror, his forge, and that's what makes his Dakodo so timeless. It is not just a guide for samurai, but for anyone seeking clarity in a noisy, restless age. Masashi's 21 precepts teach us to live without fear, without regret, and without distraction, to walk alone, not in sadness or isolation, but in strength and authenticity. Because to walk alone is to truly know oneself. Centuries may have passed since Masashi's time, but his wisdom feels more relevant now than ever. We live in a world overflowing with stimulation, a world where solitude often feels uncomfortable, even frightening. But maybe, just maybe, the answers we're searching for are not hidden in the next message, the next trend, or the next voice shouting online. Maybe they've been waiting in the silence all along. So how can we, modern seekers living in this age of constant noise, walk our own path of solitude? How can we apply Masashi's ancient wisdom to find focus, peace, and purpose in our daily lives? Let's take our first step on this journey, guided by the timeless words of the lone samurai, as we explore how solitude can reshape not just your mind, but your entire way of living. In the final week of his life, as his body grew frail but his mind remained razor sharp, Musashi composed a short yet profound text, Dakodo, meaning the path of aloneness, or the way to go forth alone. Each precept is like a blade, simple in form, but forged through a lifetime of experience, self-discipline, and introspection. They were the distillation of everything he had learned through solitude, his final offering to the world before his death. Among his most striking teachings is the lesson of self-reliance. Musashi wrote, "Do not seek pleasure for its own sake. At first, it seems austere, even cold, but beneath those words lies a deep compassion, a warning against losing ourselves in fleeting gratification." He reminds us that the pursuit of shallow pleasure, whether from material possessions or the approval of others, cannot bring lasting fulfillment. Pleasure fades, recognition disappears, but the strength you build within yourself, that endures. Musashi teaches that true satisfaction must be cultivated from within, through action, growth, and integrity. It's not about denying joy, but about understanding its source. When happiness depends on external validation, it becomes fragile. But when it rises from one's own effort and self-respect, it becomes unshakable. Think about it. How often do we chase pleasure only to feel emptier afterward? How many times do we scroll, consume, or compare, searching for a sense of meaning that never seems to come? Masashi's wisdom cuts through that illusion. He invites us to turn inward, to find stability not in what we own or how others see us, but in who we are when we stand alone. Another powerful precept from Dakodo reads, "Do not, under any circumstances, depend on a partial feeling." This one pierces straight to the core of human behavior. Musashi warns against letting fleeting emotions dictate our choices. Impulse, he knew, is the enemy of clarity. He urges us to act not from momentary passion or fear, but from understanding, to let reason, not reaction, guide our path. It's a timeless lesson. How many times have we spoken words in anger that we later regretted? Made decisions out of excitement or anxiety, only to realize we weren't thinking clearly? Masashi's counsel is a reminder to pause, to breathe, to reflect, and to move with intention. Because wisdom doesn't rush. True mastery, whether in battle or in life, is built on awareness, patience, and restraint. He wanted us to understand that emotions are like waves. They rise, crash, and fade. If we anchor ourselves too tightly to them, we risk being pulled under. But if we observe them calmly, they pass and clarity returns. This is the foundation of mental strength, the ability to act with calm purpose, even when the storm rages within. Musashi also spoke about the importance of detachment, a principle often misunderstood. In Dakodo, he wrote, "Do not hold on to possessions you no longer need." On the surface, it sounds simple, a call to declutter. But Masashi's message runs much deeper. He wasn't only talking about physical possessions. He was talking about letting go of everything that chains the spirit, old attachments, toxic relationships, unhelpful habits, and burdensome thoughts that no longer serve our growth. To him, holding on to unnecessary things was like carrying stones in one's heart. The heavier the load, the slower the journey. By releasing what no longer serves us, we make space for peace, for clarity, for transformation. Look around your own life. What are you still holding on to that has already served its purpose? Sometimes, the hardest things to release aren't objects, but emotions, resentment, guilt, fear, the longing for what once was. Masashi's wisdom challenges us to loosen our grip, to trust that letting go does not mean losing, but making room for what truly matters. In another of his precepts, Musashi wrote with striking courage, "Do not fear death." This was not a call to recklessness, but an invitation to live fully. To him, fear of death was the greatest chain that bound the human spirit. He believed that once we accept death as a natural part of life, we are finally free to live without hesitation. When we stop clinging to the illusion of permanence, every moment becomes infinitely precious. Masashi's words remind us to embrace the present, to live as if each sunrise were our last, and each breath a gift. When we live with that awareness, gratitude naturally replaces fear. We stop wasting our days worrying about the inevitable, and instead focus on making each day meaningful. Because to fear death is to fear life itself. But to accept it is to live without limits. Then comes one of Masashi's most profound teachings. Be detached from desire your whole life long. This does not mean giving up dreams or ambitions. It means freeing ourselves from the endless craving that keeps us restless and unsatisfied. Desire, when uncontrolled, is like fire. It can drive us forward, but it can also consume us. Musashi urges us to master that fire, to let it warm us but never burn us. He teaches that true peace comes not from getting everything we want, but from being content with what we already have, while continuing to grow and improve. It's about balance, striving without obsession, pursuing goals without losing our center. When desire stops ruling us, we reclaim our power. We no longer chase fulfillment, we become it. These precepts, self-reliance, emotional mastery, detachment, acceptance of death, and freedom from desire, form the essence of Dakodo. Together, they create a map for navigating life with courage, focus, and serenity. They invite us to walk lightly, to think deeply, act wisely, and live truthfully. Masashi's wisdom may have been forged in an age of swords and honor, but its relevance today is undeniable. We may no longer fight duels in open fields, but we battle constantly against distraction, comparison, and the noise of modern life. And perhaps that is why his message feels even more urgent now than ever. Today, our world is louder, faster, and more connected than Musashi could have ever imagined. Technology has bound us together more closely than any age before. We are surrounded by voices, updates, and opinions, yet somehow, more people feel lost, anxious, and disconnected than ever. It's ironic, isn't it? We have never been more connected, yet we struggle to truly be with ourselves. Musashi warned against such dependency centuries ago. He understood that when we fill every empty moment with noise, we lose the ability to listen, not just to the world, but to our own hearts. And that's where solitude becomes vital once again. So how can we, in this hyper-connected age, practice the art of solitude without withdrawing from life itself? Masashi's path gives us timeless guidance. First, we can begin by creating moments of intentional solitude, stepping away from the constant rush of daily life. This could mean waking a little earlier to sit in silence, taking slow walks in nature, meditating, journaling, or simply sitting quietly without distractions. These aren't acts of escape, they are acts of reconnection. Moments when the noise settles, and your true thoughts begin to surface. During these times, allow yourself to think freely, reflect deeply, and simply be. No screens, no performance, no pretending, just you, raw, present, and alive. Another powerful practice is the digital detox, setting aside dedicated times each day to disconnect from your devices. Imagine what might happen if, for even 1 hour, you silenced all notifications, turned off the noise, and let your mind breathe. It might feel uncomfortable at first, like standing in a room that's too quiet. But soon, that quiet begins to feel like peace, and in that peace, something beautiful awakens: awareness. By consciously disconnecting from the external world, even for short moments, we reconnect with the inner one, the part of ourselves that modern life too often drowns out. We begin to rediscover what truly matters, and we realize how much strength lies in stillness. Musashi's path was never about isolation, it was about inner independence. He showed that solitude is not the absence of others, but the presence of oneself. And when we learn to stand alone, not in bitterness, but in clarity, we find a power that no noise, no chaos, no distraction can take away. These lessons from Dakodo are more than words on paper. They are invitations to slow down, to reflect, and to walk with quiet confidence on our own path of life. For when we walk alone, guided by wisdom rather than fear, we discover that solitude is not emptiness, it is freedom. The power of solitude. As we explored earlier, Musashi taught us that solitude is not isolation, it's a sacred space where strength and clarity are forged. Now, let's take this idea deeper, into how we can truly live it in our modern lives. Practicing solitude is not just about finding quiet moments away from others. It's also about creating mental and emotional distance from the constant noise of the world, the opinions, comparisons, and expectations that pull us in every direction. When we take time for self-reflection and inner peace, we are reclaiming our independence, freeing ourselves from the endless demands that fight for our attention. In doing so, we carve out a sacred space for stillness, a place where the mind can breathe. But solitude is more than just being physically alone. It's about standing emotionally and mentally independent, even when surrounded by people. It means detaching from the craving for approval, resisting the impulse to measure our worth against others, and letting go of the need to fit in. In a world where conformity often feels safer, choosing to stand firm in your beliefs can feel uncomfortable, even rebellious. Yet, this is exactly what Musashi meant: to remain centered in your own truth, even when the world moves in the opposite direction. And so, solitude becomes a kind of discipline, a quiet strength that steadies the heart. It's not about shutting others out, but about building a solid foundation within, so that your peace no longer depends on the noise outside. Musashi's teachings remind us: make solitude a priority. Treat it not as a luxury to be enjoyed when convenient, but as a necessity, as vital to your soul as food is to your body. Make it a non-negotiable part of your daily routine, a ritual of care and self-understanding. When we view solitude as essential rather than optional, it transforms from something we escape to into something we live with. Though the world today looks nothing like Musashi's, filled with screens, connections, and constant noise, the wisdom he left behind remains timeless. His lessons in solitude transcend centuries, offering us a path to peace, balance, and self-mastery. By weaving these principles into our daily lives, we can learn not only to be alone, but to flourish in aloneness, discovering a deep sense of fulfillment that comes from within. Addressing the challenges of solitude, of course. Embracing solitude isn't always easy. It often runs against our natural instincts for connection and social belonging. Sometimes, The idea of being alone feels frightening. We associate solitude with loneliness, isolation, or even rejection. In a world that constantly pushes us to connect, choosing solitude can seem counterintuitive, even counterproductive. But here lies a truth worth remembering. Solitude and loneliness are not the same. Loneliness is an emotional ache, a painful sense of being cut off, unseen, or unwanted. It's the feeling of being disconnected from others. Solitude, on the other hand, is something entirely different. It is the act of being alone without feeling lonely. It is not absence, but presence, a deep, meaningful engagement with oneself. Think of it this way. Loneliness drains your spirit, while solitude restores it. Loneliness closes you off from life. Solitude opens you up to it. Another common misconception is that solitude means total withdrawal, as if one must retreat to a cave or live like a hermit to experience it. But that's not the case. True solitude is not about isolation. It's about balance. It's about weaving quiet, introspective moments into the rhythm of daily life, finding time to pause, breathe, and reconnect with your inner voice amidst the noise. You might spend an hour walking alone at sunset, a few minutes journaling before bed, or simply sitting silently with your thoughts. No phone, no distraction, just awareness. Each of these moments strengthens the bond between you and your inner self. Most importantly, solitude requires intentionality. It doesn't just happen, you must choose it. You must make the conscious decision to set aside time for yourself, to reflect, to observe your thoughts without judgment. It's a deliberate act, a quiet rebellion against the endless rush of modern life. And yes, solitude can be uncomfortable, when the noise fades and we are left alone with our thoughts. The silence can feel heavy, even intimidating, but this discomfort is not something to fear, it's a sign of growth. It means you are facing yourself honestly, pushing beyond old boundaries, and stepping into a deeper awareness. Growth rarely feels comfortable, and solitude is no exception. Musashi understood this challenge deeply. He knew the tension between the human need for connection and the warrior's path of independence. Yet through his own life, he demonstrated that solitude, though demanding, is also profoundly transformative. He saw it not as emptiness, but as a forge, a place where clarity, strength, and wisdom are born. Through his teachings, Musashi left us a blueprint for navigating these challenges, a guide to embracing solitude without fear, and to discovering the immense power hidden within it. The journey through the life and lessons of Miyamoto Musashi serves as a powerful reminder of what solitude truly means. It's not a punishment, nor a retreat from life, but a pathway to personal growth and self-realization. It teaches us that the path to mastery, to understanding who we truly are, often requires walking alone for a while. The journey will not always be easy. There will be moments of doubt, silence, and discomfort, but those who dare to walk this path will find something extraordinary, a peace that cannot be shaken, a strength that does not depend on others, and a wisdom that grows only in stillness. Perhaps, as Musashi did centuries ago, you too will come to discover this truth, that being alone is not a weakness to be feared, but a power to be embraced. And maybe, just maybe, learning to stand alone will become the very thing that transforms your life. If you found meaning in this reflection, consider sharing it with someone who might need it. And if you'd like to explore more timeless philosophies and inner journeys, don't forget to like, subscribe, and stay tuned for more. Because sometimes, the most profound discoveries begin in silence.